There is a story in the Old Testament that I must confess is the darkest and most haunting one in the entire Bible. Its content is violent and not suitable for children. So before you watch this video, I want to ensure you understand that it is not appropriate for all ages and may trigger past traumas. This story is recorded in chapters 19 to 21 of the Book of Judges, with many people only familiar with chapter 19 while ignoring the rest of the narrative. This is unfortunate, as I believe the subsequent chapters contain valuable lessons that you and I can explore together. In this video, I will recount this story in the most dramatic way, and together, we will delve into the lessons that this mysterious story seeks to convey. Before diving into today's content, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. It only takes a second to click like, but it means a lot to us. We begin our journey by exploring chapter 19 of the Book of Judges, a particularly remarkable chapter in the Bible. This chapter opens as follows. In those days, when there was no king in Israel, there was a Levite living in a remote area in the hill country of Ephraim, who took a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. This is the story of a Levite from the hill country of Ephraim in northern Israel, who took a woman from Bethlehem in the south as his concubine, or, as some sources note, his lawful wife. The story continues when the Levite's wife betrayed him and returned to her parents' home in Bethlehem, where she stayed for 4 months. In an effort to reconcile the relationship, the Levite set out with a servant and 2 donkeys from Ephraim to Bethlehem to bring his wife back. There, his father-in-law showed incredible hospitality, repeatedly urging him to stay another night. Despite the Levite insisting on returning home, he eventually agreed and stayed for several days. However, when he finally left, a series of tragic events quickly unfolded. This story highlights not only the geographical, but also the cultural and societal differences between northern and southern Israel at the time. Scholars suggest that this event demonstrates a decline in morality and social order, as there was no strong central authority to manage or resolve conflicts. The relationships between the characters and the subsequent events provide deep insights into loyalty, betrayal, and the consequences of weak leadership in society. As the Levite and his concubine continued their journey north from Bethlehem, they passed through unfamiliar territories of southern Israel, approaching the city of Jebus, modern-day Jerusalem. As evening approached, the servant proposed stopping for the night in Jebus, but the master refused, saying, "We will not stop in a foreign city where there are no Israelites. Let us continue to Gibeah." The journey reflects the dangers and uncertainties of traveling through unfamiliar regions, illustrating the atmosphere of insecurity during a time when there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Judges 21:25. Eventually, they reached Gibeah, a city belonging to the tribe of Benjamin, but to their surprise, no one there welcomed them. This starkly contrasts with the traditional hospitality of ancient Israelites, where refusing to host strangers was considered a grave insult. When night began to fall, an elderly man passing through the square asked in astonishment, "Why are you still here? Hasn't anyone invited you into their home yet?" The Levite answered, "No, no one has invited us." The elderly man, with sincere hospitality, invited them to his house, ensuring they had a safe place to rest. Even though the Levite assured that they had everything they needed, the elderly man warmly welcomed them, demonstrating kindness and respect, while emphasizing the community's duty to strangers in that era. The story in Gibeah reached its peak in a terrifying scene. While the Levite, his servant, and his concubine were resting at the elderly man's house, a mob of wicked men from the city surrounded the home. They banged on the door and demanded that the host bring the Levite out so they could know him, a euphemism in the Bible referring to sexual relations. A brutal and perverse request that highlighted the moral decay of the city of Gibeah, where the tribe of Benjamin resided. This request echoed the depravity in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis, where the townspeople similarly sought to abuse strangers. Both events symbolize a society that had completely lost its moral compass and compassion. The homeowner tried to calm the crowd, pleading with them to abandon their intentions. "Please, my brothers, don't commit this evil act. After all, this man has come under my roof. Don't do this vile thing." To protect his guest, he even offered his virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine to the mob. This shocking action likely reflected the prevailing belief in the sacred duty to protect guests under one's roof, even at great personal sacrifice. However, the crowd refused and continued their demands. Eventually, the Levite acted by throwing his concubine outside to the violent mob and locking the door behind her. Judges 19:25-28, compare Judges 26, contrasting the divine intervention in Genesis 19:11. The mob then abused, raped, and tortured her throughout the night. At dawn, they released her, leaving her utterly exhausted and in agony. This event was shocking and horrifying, marking a major turning point in the Old Testament, highlighting the moral decay and consequences of a society without leadership and order. The story in the book of Judges reaches the peak of horror and tragedy. After enduring a night of torture and continuous abuse by the vicious mob of Gibeah, the woman was so exhausted that, at dawn, she could only drag herself to the doorstep of her host's house, collapsing there in pain and despair. This image evokes profound suffering, physical and emotional torment that left her unable to take another step. When the Levite stepped outside the next morning, instead of showing compassion, he coldly remarked, "Get up, let's go." This cold statement underscores the inhumanity in his response to the extreme suffering of the woman who had endured unimaginable agony all night. There was no reply from her, because she was dead. From here, the story turns to a haunting act, as the Levite placed his concubine's body on a donkey, returned home, and performed a horrific deed. He took a knife, dismembered her body into 12 parts, and sent each part to the 12 tribes of Israel. This act was not only a call for vengeance, but also an accusation directed at the entire nation of Israel for the moral corruption they were facing. When the tribes received the body parts and the accompanying letter detailing the tragedy, they were stunned and horrified, saying, "Such a thing has never happened or been seen since the day the Israelites came up out of Egypt until now." The Levite's action shocked Israel, becoming a symbol of the moral collapse within the community and sparking a wave of reactions from the tribes, who saw this as an unprecedented stain in their history. As the tribes confronted this brutal and painful reality, they faced a difficult choice: how to respond in a way that would preserve the nation's honor and address the crimes spreading across Israel. This event was not only an indictment of the societal condition at the time, but also a profound reminder of the community's responsibility to uphold justice and human dignity. The brutal narrative in the book of Judges continues to unveil one of the darkest chapters of morality and humanity in Israel's history. Following the tragedy of the Levite's wife, the events in chapters 20 and 21 plunge the entire nation of Israel into a fierce conflict, leaving profound lessons for reflection. The men of Israel gathered to hear the details of what had transpired, but the Levite lied. Instead of describing the Gibeah men's intent to assault him, he reported that they sought to kill him, abused his wife, and that she died. He omitted the fact that he sent his wife outside to protect himself. Israel vowed not to return home until justice was served. They first confronted the tribe of Benjamin, demanding they surrender the perpetrators, giving Benjamin an opportunity to show solidarity with Israel and avoid war. However, the highly skilled Benjamin warriors refused, effectively declaring secession. Civil war ensued. Israel defeated Benjamin, but the slaughter was horrifying. Instead of remembering the murder of an innocent woman and vowing not to repeat such atrocities, Israel killed most of the Benjamin residents, along with their livestock and any innocent bystanders they encountered. The Israelite warriors then swore not to allow their daughters to marry the surviving Benjamites, reminding readers that, like the concubine, women had no voice. They eradicated the existence of the tribe of Benjamin by killing their wives and children while withholding their own daughters. The story of the devastating battle between the Israelite tribes and Benjamin is one of the Bible's classic examples of how misguided decisions can lead to a chain of catastrophic consequences far beyond human intention. In this fierce war, only 600 Benjamin men survived, with no women left to sustain the tribe. The fear of an Israelite tribe's extinction forced the 11 victorious tribes to face deep guilt and regret despite their victory. The survival dilemma of the Benjamin tribe serves as a powerful reminder of the complex and uncontrollable nature of consequences. Every poor decision can trigger unforeseen ripple effects. Initially, the actions of some Benjamites were immoral, but the response of the other tribes was equally ruthless. Their choice to resolve the conflict through violence escalated the situation, leading to an outcome no one desired: heavy losses on both sides. From this, the story presents a bitter truth. We can control our actions, but we cannot control their consequences. Judges 21:6. Their choices weakened both sides, and now they face the heartbreaking consequence: a tribe on the verge of disappearing forever. To address the survival of the tribe of Benjamin, the Israelites decided to launch another attack on Jabesh Gilead, killing all the men and taking 400 unmarried women as wives for the surviving Benjamites. However, this was merely a temporary solution and failed to fully resolve the issue. 200 Benjamin men were still without wives. The Israelites' violent approach to fix a previous violent situation only perpetuated and repeated the cycle of tragedy. Faced with the potential extinction of the tribe of Benjamin, the Israelites exploited a legal and moral loophole. They had sworn not to give their daughters to the Benjamites, but they devised a plan to hold a festival where young women would dance. Under this plan, the Benjamin men could seize these women as wives, ensuring the survival of their tribe without officially breaking the oath. This serves as a troubling example of moral compromise, where individuals bend the rules to serve personal purposes, further perpetuating the cycle of poor decisions and consequences. This chain of tragedies demonstrates the far-reaching impact of violent and irresponsible decisions, affecting not only the direct participants but also completely innocent individuals. The story concludes with the declaration, "In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes." Judges 21:25. The story concludes with the declaration, "In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes." Judges 21:25. This is not just a summary, but a warning about the consequences of unchecked freedom and the lack of unity in common goals. When individuals define right and wrong according to their own desires, society descends into chaos and loss. Yet, amidst the storm of sin and suffering, we also see God's mercy. He did not allow the tribe of Benjamin to disappear entirely, but gave them a chance to rebuild and recover, reflecting His patience with humanity despite their grave mistakes. The first lesson from this story emphasizes the consequences of a lack of responsibility and leadership. Judges 19:1 describes a time when there was no king in Israel, and in the absence of authority, the people strayed far from the path of morality. In a context of chaos and disorder, the Israelites no longer adhered to moral and legal standards. Without anyone to guide them, unrestrained and unethical actions took root, leading society into corruption and sin. From this story, we recognize the importance of maintaining responsibility and leadership in modern society, where neglect can lead to tragedies greater than we might imagine. The second lesson relates to the sanctity of human dignity. In the story, we witness a horrifying act where the host offered his virgin daughter and the Levite's concubine to appease the mob instead of protecting the male guest. This reveals a troubling disregard for the value of women, who were treated as substitutes and stripped of their dignity. This lesson urges us to respect the inherent worth of every individual, regardless of gender, and to fight against dehumanization, which sadly persists in today's world. The final lesson is a warning about the dangers of spiritual detachment and the absence of divine guidance. The story of moral decline in the later chapters of Judges illustrates a nation gradually drifting away from God's leadership, resulting in a spiral of violence and chaos. These events highlight that, without a spiritual foundation, people can easily fall into cruel and immoral behavior. If everyone in modern society could view each other as dignified and cherished individuals, created in the image of God, we could build a culture of respect and peace. The takeaway from this story is the understanding that every decision carries consequences beyond our control. Instead of attempting to bypass moral principles, we are reminded to act responsibly, knowing that the impact of our choices can extend beyond ourselves to affect entire communities. If you find these stories intriguing and want to explore more biblical characters and lessons, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss upcoming videos. Leave a comment below to share your thoughts or the lessons you've drawn from this turbulent journey. Thank you for watching. May God bless you and your family.